All right. Hey YouTube, I'm Lucky, and in today's video, we're going over the S tier vendor armor refresh PSA. Now, this is something that I do every week. If you don't know, inside Destiny 2, all of the vendors' armors refresh, and some of these armor pieces are actually S tier and are going to be great for creating awesome builds for PvE, PvP, or even Gambit for that matter. And so let's go through it. We're starting with the Titan character. This week, there's a bunch of good armor for your Titan. If you go to Devon right here, these pair of boots don't necessarily look the best, but this is a great split between resilience and recovery. If you don't know, you can't have like 20 recovery and 20 resilience on a legendary armor piece. I don't know why that is a thing, but for some reason you just can't get 20 and 20. So the best split you're going to get is around, I think, 16-16 or maybe even 17-17 if you got an absolute perfect roll. But an 11-13 roll with a 56 overall stat and pair of boots is amazing for your Titan. You need high resilience to put down Titan walls, and you need 5 resilience so that way you don't get absolutely clapped by 120 RPM hand cannons in the Crucible. We got 13 recovery and 19 intellect, so that way you get your super back pretty fast. The Behemoth super is still extremely potent, and you do have 9 strength because that melee is very sweet. And again, we want very low mobility when we look at these armor pieces, so 2 mobility makes this an S tier pair of boots for your Titan. Make sure to pick these up from Devon if you haven't already. Even I am going to pick these bad boys up. Now let's go on to the next vendor. And next up, we are still on our Titan, but we are now at the vendor Drifter, and he has a pretty solid chest piece here. We got 17 recovery and 18 strength. So it's going to be a great chest piece overall. 52 is a little on the low end, and the mobility is a little high here. We've got 7 mobility, so kind of a wasted stat. So I don't know if I would necessarily call this an S tier armor piece, but it is a solid chest piece if you're looking for one for your Titan. And the helmet is comparable as well. We do have that 7 mobility, which is a little bit of a downside to it, but 20 recovery is definitely solid. Going to give you great builds, PvE, PvP overall. Definitely make sure to pick up this helmet on your Titan. Now let's go to the last vendor for the Titan. And the last vendor for your Titan is Lord Shax himself, and he has a pretty good helmet, one that's very comparable to the one that Drifter has. It has 20 recovery. It does have a little bit of that mobility that you don't want, but 56 stat overall is a great helmet. And anytime an armor piece hits 20 in the recovery stat base, that is a very good armor stat, because recovery is one of the most important stats regardless of character, Titan, Hunter, or Warlock. You always want to have high recovery. Low recovery is painful in PvE and PvP. Now let's move over to our next character. We're going to the Hunter. And we are now on the Hunter, and the first vendor we're going to go see is the Drifter, because Drifter has an excellent chest piece for your Hunter. We've got 20 recovery, 7 mobility, 6 discipline, 9 intellect, and 12 strength. Now, for the Hunter, it's a lot easier to find some god tier armor because all stats are pretty good for the Hunter. The only stat that's really not that exceptionally good currently in Crucible for your Hunter is intellect. So if you can find a high stat armor piece, regardless of what it is, if it's 60 plus, it's probably good for your Hunter overall, but you still want to focus mostly on recovery, because even on your Hunter, you want to have that high recovery build. High mobility can be really nice. You can also rock Worm Husk if you want to rock a little bit lower recovery. But overall, regardless of what builds you're using, most of the time you want to have high recovery, and this chest piece will definitely help you get there. And then next up, we have these pair of boots here. These actually have 18 recovery on them, 11 discipline, 9 intellect, 7 strength, and a little bit of resilience on them with a 55 overall stat. A great pair of boots for your Hunter. Definitely make sure to grab these if you can this week. And this is going to be the last armor piece for a Hunter. Zavala does have a decently rolled chest piece in terms of recovery and discipline, but it's a 49 stat overall. So I definitely didn't want to promote that as being S tier, because I really think that you should look for armor around the mid 50s at the very least. Obviously, anything within the 60s at base stats is amazing, especially if the stats drop in the right places. I've mentioned that many times before. The right stats in the right places is better than the overall number being higher, but 49 is just really low, so I didn't want to show you that Zavala chest piece. And I'm going to move on to the Warlock now. All right, and the last piece that we're going to look at for this week is at Devrim on your Warlock. There's a helmet that's definitely respectable. Okay, we got 17 recovery, 15 intellect, 10 strength, and a little bit of resilience there. Okay, a 52 overall stat, a little on the lower side, but we're at least in the 50 section, so I will say that this is a pretty good helmet for your Warlock. Now, one thing to keep in mind when you're creating builds, okay, for PvP, make sure you have at least 8 resilience, 80 resilience at the lowest, okay? 100 is ideal, of course, especially if you're on Warlock, you get those rifts back faster, but at least 8 in PvP is my opinion. And along with that, you definitely want to have 50 resilience, because that will prevent you from getting shot 1 to the head and 2 to the body from 120 RPM hand cannons. That'll make your survivability so much better, especially if you're trying to play endgame content like Iron Banner or Comp or Trials. A lot of people are going to be using the meta, the strongest weapons in the game. They're going to be using 120 RPM hand cannons, and you don't want to get absolutely murked out there. You don't want to give yourself any sort of a deficit, so make sure you have at least 5 resilience regardless of Titan, Hunter, and Warlock. Obviously on Titan it's a little bit easier to find that resilience because resilience armor drops a little bit easier and more common, but make sure overall to have at least those stats: 8 recovery, 5 resilience in the PvP world. In the PvE world, of course, you want to have as much recovery as possible. The same principle would apply. At least 80 recovery, in my opinion, 100 ideally, of course. And then in terms of stat distribution, you can distribute your stats in a variety of other different ways. It really doesn't matter a whole lot. Of course, if you're trying to stun champions with, arc grenades, put on as much discipline as you can, play to your builds a little bit, of course. And that is ultimately why I make these S tier vendor armor refresh PSA videos, because I want you to go out there and get a variety of different armor pieces, so that way you can create a bunch of different builds based on the activities within the game. Grandmasters require certain builds, low end PvE requires certain builds, raids require certain builds, trials, comp, it doesn't matter what playlist you're playing, there's always different builds that are strong or suitable for different players. So make sure to get out there and get a bunch of different armor. And best of luck to you out there in your efforts to create new builds. Make sure to comment down below if you're using any unique or creative builds inside Destiny 2. I love seeing those comments. Subscribe if you enjoyed the video and smash the like button. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Later.
Subscribe to Lucky 10p and smash that motherfucking like button. And check out my second channel too, Lucky 10p Shorts. Link in bio.